Trump's trial is nearing the finish line in downtown Manhattan, where the jury is set to hear closing arguments Tuesday. Less dramatic, but also important, are the instructions that Judge Merchan will give the jury before they begin deliberations. Typically, those instructions direct the jury on how to consider the evidence and how to apply the law. They lay out the elements of the case that must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt in order to reach a guilty verdict. It sounds mundane, but they're important in every case, including this one. To convict Trump on any of the 34 felony counts he's facing, the jury must believe that Trump falsified business records with an intent to commit or conceal another crime. So the challenge is to distill a lot of legalese into clear and concise language so the jury knows exactly what they're doing when they decide whether or not to convict Donald Trump. And as the New York Times put it, quote, the outcome of the case could very well turn on the substance of the instructions jurors receive. Judge Cordell is a former Superior Court judge from the state of California, and she joins me now. Judge Cordell, thank you so much for spending some time with me on a Memorial Day weekend. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
So let me just start with the jury instructions. I mean, they might not be the most exciting part of a trial out there. You might have heard Andrew Weissman's take in the previous segment, but it's important for people to understand. So how do they help the jury apply the law to the evidence they've heard at a trial? Most of people on the jury are not lawyers or from the judicial system, of course.
Yeah, well, Jen, my take on jury instructions is a bit different from that of Andrew Weissman. Guilty verdicts are reversed most frequently because of faulty jury instructions. And who is it that gives the jury instructions? It's the judge. It's all the judge's fault if a conviction gets reversed because of the jury instructions. So the jury has two jobs: find the facts and also then apply the law. And in the jury instructions, there's some talk about circumstantial evidence, direct evidence, what to do when you go into the jury deliberation room, how you should keep an open mind. But the key elements on these jury instructions are the crimes that are charged here against Donald Trump. Now, you recall that the judge, when going over the instructions with the lawyers, there were 12 different instructions or issues that came up that the judge had to decide. And of the 12, the judge still didn't make decisions on at least 5 of them. And then when all that was done, the prosecution raised another 6 issues with jury instructions, and the defense raised 6, prosecution raised 3, and the judge deferred decisions on all those until later. So these are really, really important in the weeds kinds of stuff that are going to go to the jurors. So think about this. You have 12 jurors, and they're all lay people. And I include the 2 lawyers because they do civil cases. They don't do criminal cases. So in this instance, these are people who this whole criminal system, reasonable doubt, is all new to them. So they're going to get these instructions that deal with the elements of the offenses that these lawyers and the judge couldn't even agree upon, and the judge is still waiting to decide. And then finally, this is just what boggles my mind. So the judge is going to read these instructions eventually, and there'll be pages of them. And I have done this when I have presided over criminal cases. So in New York, apparently, the copies, written copies of the jury instructions do not go into the jury room. So the jurors are sitting there taking all this information in and having to remember. They don't have the ability to do that, particularly when this in the weeds kinds of stuff. So it is my hope that, of course, a copy of the jury instructions will go into the jury deliberation room. I always did that when I presided over jury trials. And if the law in New York doesn't require it, I hope that there will be legislators in New York or people in the judiciary who will make it a rule. How can you possibly consider all this without actually seeing the jury instructions in writing?
I saw that, and it also struck me as a non-lawyer, how will they know what to do and how will they remember how to implement all of this? So let me ask you, I mean, the jury must believe, in order to convict Trump, they must believe that Trump falsified business records with, quote, an intent to commit another crime, which is very specific. According to the judge, the jury does not need to be unanimous about what the other crime was. This is what are you going to be looking for in terms of how that is spelled out in the jury instructions to properly instruct them on how they should consider this?
Right. So that was one of the issues that came up when the jury instructions were being discussed. But you left out a word. It said Donald Trump caused the documents to be falsified. So the issue that was discussed is, what does cause mean? How does someone cause something to happen? Does somebody tell somebody to do it, or can you cause it in a different way? That's another issue that's the judge is considering, which will be a part of the instructions. So the jurors have to understand what cause means, and then the intent to defraud, and then the commission of crimes. So the defense wanted the jury to be unanimous on what these crimes were. And so the prosecution says, no, 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 no. The jury doesn't have to be unanimous. They can think that there were different crimes. It could be election fraud. It could be tax evasion. They don't have to be unanimous. They just have to believe that there was some sort of crime that was going to be committed, or that Donald Trump aided or assisted in committing. All of this is going to be contained in the jury instructions. They have to have this stuff in writing so they know exactly what to do. And going forward, sitting there trying to figure out if the elements of the crimes have been proved beyond a reasonable doubt. I just can't emphasize enough, these jury instructions are critical to what's going to happen in this case.
Judge Cordell, thank you so much for educating us, informing us. Very few people know as much as you do about how this works. So really appreciate it as well. We're all preparing to watch next week. Thanks for joining me. And coming